Have you ever had the fear that you would have been a passive bystander in the face of injustice? For as long as I can remember, I've been afraid of who I would have been during the long era of slavery in this country, or what role I would have played during the reign of Jim Crow. It terrifies me to think that I would have been on the wrong side of history, that I would have been a passive bystander, or perhaps even worse, an active participant. A few years ago, I discovered something that made this fear more pressing than ever, a staggering statistic that made the question of who I would have been in history real rather than merely hypothetical. I learned that the prison population in the United States of America had increased by over 500% in the last 36 years, resulting in a country which makes up 5% of the world's population, imprisoning 25% of the world's prison population. Let me repeat that statistic. The United States of America, a nation which prides itself on being the leader of the free world, currently makes up 5% of the world's population, and yet imprisons 25% of the world's prison population, making the U.S. the most jailing country in the history of the world. So here I am, face to face with the reality that injustice isn't just something that occurred, but that is occurring. What more proof did I now need to confirm my fear of who I would have been if I proceeded to do nothing? Now, mass incarceration is a daunting adversary for anyone, let alone a white, middle-aged, middle-class, high school English teacher who's never really taken on much in regards to activism or any other kind of social change. After thinking about the situation, I realized that I needed to teach a course on the subject, to share with my students what I had learned, and hopefully to inspire them to care. The course I created is called Voices from the Inside, stories written in or about prison and what they can teach us about ourselves. In addition to teaching Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, I decided to include work by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Viktor Frankl, and others. I got really excited about the class and started thinking about all the great movies I could use. Dead Man Walking, In the Name of the Father, and who could ever forget The Shawshank Redemption? However, despite my enthusiasm, I knew that something was missing. As luck would have it, 2 days before the first day of class, I bumped into a former student who was home from college on break. I started to tell him about this new class I was going to teach and about how thrilled I was to teach it. And he said that he had recently befriended a young man out in California who had coincidentally grown up right here in Miami. This young man's mother happened to be teaching creative writing at the Homestead Correctional Institution and would certainly be interested in what I was doing. Within a few hours, I was on the phone with the incomparable Kathy Klarich, and the rest has been pure magic. Inspired by her life and work in Haiti, Kathy Klarich dedicated herself to teaching in prisons. Over the course of her 13 and a half years in that country, she developed a heightened appreciation for how important it is for people to speak on their own behalf. As she said to me on a number of occasions, if we seriously want to talk about prison reform, we need to hear from those who are most directly affected. By the end of our first phone conversation, Kathy and I agreed to facilitate a writing exchange between our students, immediately giving new and more profound meaning to the title of my course, Voices from the Inside. We decided to fashion our exchange after a model that Kathy had created with a professor at Florida Atlantic University that paired students on the inside with students on the outside, had them write under pseudonyms in order to preserve anonymity, and had them submit a series of personal narratives and critical responses to various pieces of literature. Those on the inside were instructed not to write about their crimes, and those on the outside were instructed not to ask about them. The void that existed in my class prior to meeting Kathy had just been filled, as the voices my students would be hearing would not only be those of artists and historical figures who had something profound to say from behind prison bars, but those of people currently incarcerated. And they too had something important to share. Under Kathy's incredible leadership, I joined a team of impassioned individuals to start Exchange for Change, a nonprofit organization that sponsors and facilitates writing courses in a number of South Florida prisons. Since launching in August of 2014, Exchange for Change has reached hundreds and hundreds of students on both sides of prison walls. And this semester, we are currently offering 16 courses in 4 different South Florida prisons. We've teamed with Miami in an effort to teach poetry, and we are currently partnering with the University of Miami, Florida International University, Florida Atlantic University, and Ransom Everglades School. Many of our courses revolve around a central writing exchange which pairs students on the inside with students on the outside. Those on the inside must undergo a thorough vetting process implemented by the Department of Corrections and must successfully complete a semester-long entry-level writing course before participating in an exchange. Our theme for today is escape, and it probably seems obvious how the writing courses we offer provide those on the inside with a temporary escape from their daily conditions. I felt that when I attended a graduation ceremony at Everglades Correctional Institution Reentry this past December. At that event, one of our students spoke about what our courses mean to him. He began by saying that one of the most important lessons he's learned in prison is that if you don't learn how to consume time, time will consume you. Although he originally enrolled in one of our courses in the interest of consuming time, he soon learned that something much more valuable was at stake. He said that our courses helped him express himself and hone his critical thinking skills, and that for the 1 hour a week he was in class, he was no longer in prison. Now, one may ask, why should we provide prisoners with an escape? After all, most of them are guilty of committing the crimes that put them behind bars in the first place. But what we on the outside need to understand is that the educational escape organizations like Exchange for Change provide help those on the inside express themselves in healthy ways as individuals in a place that by its very design thwarts individuality. Our courses nurture the character and intellect of our students, and that's in everyone's best interest, regardless of whether they're going to become our neighbors or remain behind bars. Exchange for Change has received overwhelming support from the Department of Corrections, and they've provided us with data that has helped us assess the positive impact our programs have had. What we've learned in general is that educational programs inside prisons improve prisoners' reading and writing skills, improve their self-esteem, reinforce positive behavior, and decrease disciplinary problems, help prisoners forge closer relationships with their families. These programs increase released prisoners' chances of finding a job by 28% and decrease their chances of returning to prison by 43%. Since Exchange for Change began in 2014, none of our formerly incarcerated students have yet returned to prison. That's a statistic we're extraordinarily proud of. But what may be even more surprising is that this exchange offers our students on the outside an escape as well. An escape from a preoccupation with grades, from academic pressure, and from many of the ways many of them have grown to think about their educational experience. Instead of studying for a test or writing a paper that's going to impact their GPAs, my students engage in a very different kind of learning, one that has them look past the prison label and into the humanity of their partners. By engaging in conversations through walls erected to prevent them, my students connect with an actual human being, not just with the behaviors that put that person behind bars. As an English teacher, I believe wholeheartedly in the transformative power of literature. With that said, I've also learned that even the best fiction cannot replace direct human connections. Mass incarceration has ballooned in this country over the past half-century, in part because we've built huge correctional facilities in remote locations, out of sight and hence out of mind. We've erected massive walls and massive fences for the sake of separation, and the growth of this system has been predicated on those on the outside having little to no contact with those on the inside. The discussions we facilitate fly in the face of that design, and the results speak for themselves. Here's an excerpt from an exchange that took place just last semester. My student writes under the alias of Summer, and her partner as Siddhartha.
Hello, Siddhartha. We have come to our final exchange, and my feelings are bittersweet. I lament that our exchange of ideas has come to an end, but I am extremely thankful for the lessons that I have taken from your responses. I will be completely honest. Many of my classmates, including me, gave in to the stereotype of criminals being uncivilized and ruthless. I don't really know if some prisoners fit this description, but now I am confident that it certainly does not apply to all. We also expected mediocre writing, which we thought would be typical of a criminal. However, you and your classmates blew those stereotypes away. I feel so lucky and could not have asked for a better partner in this journey. Thank you for showing me that prisoners are real people who feel, breathe, and think. Not monsters, ideas, stereotypes. Summer.
While Summer was completing her final entry, Siddhartha was composing his own.
Hi, Summer. I came to class eager to start our next assignment. Then our instructor reminded us that this would be our last exchange. What? No. There is so much more to Summer, so much more to share, so much more to learn. Alas, here we are. I didn't anticipate learning so damn much. You, your classmates are our future. You give me hope. Here, behind these gates, these walls, hope is more vital than food to eat, air to breathe. Hope gives me reason to wake up and face a new day. Hope gives my life purpose. Thank you for everything, Siddhartha.
When I meet our incarcerated students, I let them know that I work at a high school that presents its students with extraordinary opportunities, and that because of those opportunities, many of them are going to find themselves in positions of power and influence later in life. With confidence, I tell those on the inside that from the confines of your cells, you are helping to make them more empathetic and more sophisticated as thinkers. I don't know about you, but I want my leaders to be empathetic and sophisticated, talented, bright, curious, caring, wise, reflective. These are just some of the adjectives my students now use to describe their partners. Adjectives they never would have associated with the incarcerated prior to participating in this exchange. As a facilitator who works primarily with students on the outside, I have to say that the magic occurs when my students realize that a person is not an idea. As Summer's words demonstrate, Those on the outside come to learn that those who have been tagged as criminals or felons are real people with families, a lifetime of experiences, ambitions, and hope. Although many of the lessons learned are shared and therefore common, others are more unpredictable. I would say that most of my students learn to distinguish between listening to respond and really listening to understand, to question and challenge assumptions they previously weren't even aware they had, and to see that exercising judgment builds walls while suspending judgment brings them down. Additionally, many of my students emerge from the exchange with more personal and unique takeaways, some of which relate to what it means to be a citizen, and others which relate to what it means to be themselves. Although I never could have anticipated it, there's another voice from the inside that my students discover by participating in this exchange, and that voice is their own. Challenged by the quality, the authenticity, and the power in the pieces they receive, my students often find themselves feeling inadequate, especially early on in the process. They quickly realize that writing from the head just isn't going to do it. In order to provide their partners with writing worth reading, they need to learn to write from the heart. In the words of another past high school participant,
"Through this exchange, the voices from the inside actually came to life. It was not Solzhenitsyn's Ivan Denisovich, a person I could hardly relate to. It was Beth Ann, an extremely passionate and kind lady who opened herself up to me and taught me more about myself than I ever imagined I could know."
I begin each semester by introducing my students to the great Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky's profound claim that the degree of civilization in any society can only be measured by entering its prisons. Exchange for Change puts my students in a unique position to more accurately measure the degree of civilization of contemporary American society. Penetrating walls that obscure understanding is one way to start bringing them down. I'm here today to recognize the work of all of our students on both sides of prison walls. While many have gone on to engage more fully and more directly, like one who is currently fighting for prison reform through his university, and another who is teaching art classes at a state penitentiary through hers, almost all of our students have not only grown, but through this process have participated in the growth of another. I open this talk with a confession, sharing with you my fear of placing myself in history and realizing that I would have been a passive bystander in the face of injustice. Well, what this work has shown me is that historical questions are contemporary questions. And though I've not yet overcome my fear, I do know that by facilitating these conversations through prison walls, we are inspiring students on both sides of those walls to be on the right side of history. Thank you.